Welcome back to the Vigilant Ones podcast. My name is Yakub. I also have with me the one and only Sunday.
Yes.
Today we're going to talk about everything personality.
Exactly. You're welcome, everyone. So today, what we are talking personality, and what is personality?
Well, yes, that's a deep question. The word personality, I would say, comes from the Latin for persona, which is the mask actors normally put in when they are playing a role. So we all play a role in society. However we live, whether we're interacting with our family members, our colleagues, our bosses.
Yes.
So the word, I would say, the best definition for personality, which I could gather, is personality is basically how we express ourselves socially through our behaviors,
Okay.
our emotions, and our thoughts. So those three are how we present ourselves socially.
Yes. And now, how is this different from perhaps character?
Okay, interesting. Yeah, those words can often be used interchangeably, but I would say a character,
Yes.
unlike personality, it's not just how we express ourselves, it's more of to do how does the situations and the environments we grew up made us who we are. For example, we can both have the same personalities, but just because, let me say, I grew up with a rich father or rich parents, you will grow up and will have a different character than you who grew up maybe with a middle socioeconomic status. So a character is defined by our environment.
Character is defined by environment. What about temperament versus character and personality?
Yes, I will say temperament can also be almost like personality. The only difference is that temperament is the part of it which is more biological. What do I mean? When you are a child, or like even the baby, initially when they express themselves, they are using their primal biological traits. Unlike, they have not yet interacted with the society, so they have not yet built a personality. So either a child will be crying often, so there will be this child who is always crying. There's the quiet one. There's the one who's aggressive. So it's just purely biological. Yes.
Okay, so how would you differentiate? How would you define the personality trait in this aspect?
Okay, so I would say a trait is something which is sort of a permanent in our lifetime. Those behaviors we have been expressing, there are some behaviors which will be, in a sense, stable to our lifetime. Maybe there will be some variations here and there, but they are stable. Yes.
So this brings us now to the big 5 personality traits with an acronym OCEAN, standing for openness to experience, consciousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and perhaps the neuroticism. So we are going to talk about the OCEAN.
Yes,
which is 5 different personality traits.
Which is the commonest personality trait measurement currently used within academia, within offices.
Yes.
And it has the highest level of credibility and effectiveness compared to other personality traits. You might come across one which is called the MBTI personality traits, or the 16 personalities. However, the OCEAN, as Mr. Sunday mentioned, is the one which has been mostly agreed consensually by the psychologists.
Okay, so this is more of... Okay, this is one which has been agreeable, where psychologists have agreed with the OCEAN one. Let's now talk about its distribution.
Okay, so that's an interesting point, because I would say, unlike you will not exactly say a trait is something which is fixed on a person.
Yes.
So you will not say a person is an extrovert. That's the wrong way of putting it. The right way of saying is that it's a spectrum, and this person is perhaps 90th percentile extrovert, meaning he's like, let me say, only 10% are like that person. So it means he's highly extroverted. So, or you might say that person is in the 50th percentile, means he's like the maturity, or she's like the maturity. So she's midway extroverted or introverted. So it's all on a spectrum. And distribution wise, the majority of people, just like most other characters, they fall within the middle. You might say 70% of people are in the middle of the spectrum. You may say from, you can, let me say, maybe 40% to 70%.
Yes.
Only the maybe close to 1% can be real as extreme as saying this person is 100 percentile, which might even be rare to find. Maybe let me say more of like 99th or maybe 95 percentile of extroversion or openness for that matter. Or on the other end, a person is maybe 5% openness. But majority, if not almost all people, are at the middle of that distribution.
Okay. Thank you. So we come back to our first trait, and in this case, our first trait of the big five personality trait is openness to experience.
Okay. Yes, openness to experience, meaning as an individual, you are more receptive to an experience, some sort of a stimuli out there. So ideally, that's a person who is always trying to be creative, looking for ideas. They like exposing themselves to different information, so that they can be more like they can use that information for their gain. Okay, yeah.
So, but we cannot talk about openness to experience without the subtrait imagination.
Yes, so openness to experience has 6 subtraits or dimensions within it. The first one, which you mentioned, which is imagination, or the ability to fantasize. Not all of us, you can say, really have that ability to sit down and imagine what you might call maybe a creative solution, or write down a story, or come up with even joke, even humor requires some level of creativity.
Definitely.
So yes, imagination is a subtrait of openness to experience.
There is also this subtrait. The artistic interest.
Yes, artistic
in
interest.
line with openness to experience.
Yes. So that's why we have musicians. That's why we have painters. That's why we have writers. All of them are sort of one way or another tapping to the artistic, let me say, element in that openness. Doesn't mean that everyone who has high level like they are on the high percentile of openness to experience, will be artistic. But there are some subset, which are likely to be more artistic than others, which I guess you'll even see from young age. Maybe they like just to paint around, or they like to listen to music, or actually play musical instruments. So yes, that will be artistic expression.
So would you say that feelings is also a subtrait to openness to experience as a personality trait under the big five?
Yes, I would say so, considering that there are people who will go and watch sunset. They will just say like, yes, I'm feeling like, I'm having some sort of experience, some sort of a spiritual experience from watching the sunset, or I like listening to this, let me say, symphony, or even watching this kind of movies. So yes, there is an element of feelings which is innate to some people compared to others.
I'm sure that doesn't really differ so much from the adventurous aspect of it.
To some extent, yes. However, yes, some are more adventurous. You might say people who are entrepreneurs, people who like starting companies, or even to sit down and let me write a book and sell it, requires a level of adventures, because it's both risky. There's a high rate chance of failure, but the element of excitement which comes with that adventure attracts some more than others.
Okay. Then the curiosity as a subtrait of openness to experience.
Yes, so to be curious, to be exposing yourself to literature of maybe different countries, or to even read Shakespeare in currently requires a level of curiosity. or to sit down and read Einstein's theories. So you might even say it can be more of like a curse. You know, as they say, the curiosity is what kills the cat. So yes, some are more curious than others.
Definitely.
For good or bad. Yeah.
But we've also seen people who are out there challenging authority. Could this be a sub-trait, and these people are falling under this personality trait of openness to experience?
Well, that is a bit ironical, but yeah, that's true actually. There's an element of being challenging to authority, being rebellious, being, let me say, sort of an outcast in the society, which comes with openness to experience. We will talk further about when it comes to politics, but yes, I would say people who are highly in openness, you find them in places which are full of, let me say, maybe activists or in such occupations, or even at school, they're always causing some sort of a drama or another. So yes, there's an element of challenging to authority, which comes under openness to experience.
So that has been our first personality trait under the big 5 personality trait, and now, of course, we are now moving on to the second personality trait under the big 5 personality traits, and this is consciousness, or issues related to being orderly and orderliness.
Yes, so you can see how it's something to do with the way you said orderliness, and not everyone is orderly.
Okay, definitely.
Yes, we can use ourselves as examples, or the colleagues we had or friends we have. There are some of us who like live in their rooms organized. There are some who don't really mind how the house is, whether it's dirty or not. So yes, it's one of the big 5 traits.
And it has a couple of sub traits.
Yes.
So let's now discuss about competence in line with being orderly.
Yes, I think it's what makes people who are conscientious or orderly successful in society is that they aspire to be competent in their field of work. So competency is, you might say, the one which normally stands out from having that trait. Yes.
Is that so much very close or very different from being organized or being organizing as a sub-trait of consciousness?
Yes, I think you have a point, because you will not necessarily be competent unless you are organized. So to be organized or to have some sort of a routine contributes to you being a person who is highly, all about order. And before we proceed, I will even say you can see how this trait of conscientiousness or orderliness, in one way or another, is the vice versa of the one of open to experience, because we did not mention when we talk about competence or when we talk about organized person, it might be hard for that person to also be highly creative or highly imaginative. So yes, there's some level of antagonism between the two traits.
So let's talk about sense of duty as a sub-trait of consciousness.
Interesting, and you say that's what makes us a highly functioning society, is that we all aspire to the sense of duty, starting from our families, to our parents, to our relatives, to this community, to our neighbors. So yes, to have sense of duty to your, let me say, to your office, to your work, you have responsibility maybe to your customer. So yes, the sense of duty,
yes,
it's an element which is makes those people also stand out in their careers.
In their careers,
yes.
And that stand out in the career must be in relation to striving. Someone must strive out, and striving is a sub trait of consciousness as a big as one of the big 5 personality trait. So
most definitely, yes. Someone who is highly conscientiousness will be hardworking, will be striving to achieve competence, to be successful, and because of that element, that's why I keep on mentioning, yes, they are likely to succeed in both academia and even at work settings.
And we cannot really ably talk about orderliness as a personality trait when we have not really talked about self-discipline as a sub-trait?
A hard one, would you not say so? Yes, to have self-discipline requires a lot of effort. For some of us are already highly inclined to be self-disciplined. Wake up in the morning, the first thing you'll do is, for such a person will first set up his bed, will go and brush his teeth, wash a plate. So they have some good routine to be self-disciplined. It's not that today to wake up and say, today let me do this, maybe let me do this tomorrow. It's like their life is sort of organized. Yes.
And we have seen people who also care about what they say and what they do. And as a sub-trait of consciousness, that is cautiousness.
Very, very interesting point. Yes. So people who already have sense of duty are also cautious about how they act or how they portray themselves out there, or in fact how the society they live in is set in. So they would like to have a sense of, to be sort of a cautious, or to always be avoiding mistakes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Yako. And now the next other personality trait under the big five is extraversion,
which you'll say is the commonest one, because we always hear about I'm an extrovert,
yes,
or I'm an introvert. So yes, I think that those words have also been misused, considering that they don't exactly mean an extrovert is a person who just likes having fun, or you can only be an extrovert, or you can only be an introvert. And this is, I think it's even cooler to say I'm an introvert, because it makes you look like you are someone who is, smart, is an introvert, is not over talkative. So yes, there's a lot of hype around those two words, I would say.
And extraversion is associated with a number of sub-traits, including kindness.
Yes, so I guess by the time you're an extrovert, in a sense, you are kind enough that you are always meeting other people. There's an element of just talking to someone which makes them feel better about themselves. So yes, there's an element of being a kind person.
And there's also an element of being social, because we cannot really talk about extraversion,
yes,
and we leave out the social aspect of humanity.
Yes, very true, very true. I think there's nothing much to say about that, because even the two words are sort of synonymous. To be an extrovert means to be social, to be outgoing, to be out there. Yeah.
And now there's also this other sub-trait of extraversion, which moves with being assertive.
Very interesting trait, considering you might think assertiveness will be more to do with agreeableness, which we'll talk about later. However, to be outgoing, the fact that you can speak your mind already makes you more assertive than a person who cannot say it clearly. So you might not intentionally be trying to stand out, but you are already speaking your mind, or you are doing what you want to do. So yeah, it makes you assertive.
Okay, let's now talk about liveliness as a sub-trait in being extroverted as a person.
Yes, I mean, those are the people you want to have, or if you're hosting a party.
Yes.
Just know they're going to make the party lively.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the aspect of excitement seeking in an extroverted person.
You sometimes you'll be driving your car and there's this guy who's just driving like in even almost 100. So the way they're moving, or you sometimes you may even be playing football, and then there's always this guy who's putting himself in danger, or someone is inviting you in some of these risk games. I know you've heard of bungee jumping, or climbing hills. So excitement it comes with extroverts.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's the other last sub-trait of extroverts or extraversion is cheerfulness.
Yes, simply they are happy people. By the time you are such a person, you are most of the time happy. And all these characters doesn't mean that one is better than the other. Extremes, in a sense, are not ideal, because of you cannot always be happy. Otherwise, just know you'll be having conflicts with people out there. So yeah, they are cheerful.
So, dear listener, by the time we come to finish the big 5 personality traits, perhaps you'll be able to know these elements which best describes you, and perhaps that's where you might be falling on the high spectrum. So next, which is actually the 4th personality trait, is agreeableness.
Yes, to be agreeable, I guess it means, yes, someone who is always caring, someone who always says yes. So so that's the character of being associated mostly with women. Yeah, to be agreeable. Yeah, but it's a big trait.
Yes, it is a big trait, and it has a couple of other sub traits or some other elements which can ably describe a person. And let's start with trust.
Yes, those people are sort of angelic, that they trust anyone. They, on the extreme end, yes, is someone who is always open to other people. So however much you are a stranger to them, it only takes a small effort before they trust you. Yeah.
But of course, before they trust you, I think there must be some element of being honesty.
Very true. Yes, those people will say whatever is in their mind, in an honest manner. So they look at everything in an honest way.
Okay, and the other sub trait about being agreeable is the concern for others.
Yes.
Altruism.
Yes, to be altruistic. Always caring. Some sort of how like a mother in a sense. Always giving to someone.
Giving back to someone.
Yes.
Being a little more of philanthropic.
Indeed.
So let's talk about cooperation as a sub trait of agreeableness.
I think that's what makes them also a good, let me say, teamwork. A teamwork, because they are cooperative in nature. They're always willing to rhyme with their colleagues, in a sense. They don't want to stand out, in a sense, so they're always part of the team.
And for you, for a person to fall under agreeableness, I think there must be some level of humility in this person, being modest, being humble.
Yes, very true, very true. That's why I mentioned the concept of teamwork. They are not the ones who stand out and always take the credit. They're always trying to give someone else help without, some sort of someone is having a tough day, they will come and even give them maybe their work, so that they might help them with some money, in a sense. It's not that they're looking for gratitude, just that they're always willing to help out and not to be the one to stand out and take the credit, or so yeah, they are honesty and modest at the same time.
And the last element in this trait is sympathy.
Yes, sympathy. To be, you might say, they're always willing to be in the other person's shoes. Sometimes to extreme end that they will even willing to house them. They will meet someone who is a stranger, maybe who is hungry, and they will even invite them into the house. So there's an element of sympathy which stands out in that trait.
These are very good elements. These are very good sub traits.
However, I will say, just like the other trait, doesn't mean any trait at this extreme is good. Because if you are always giving, that means you don't have, you're like a doormat, in a sense. You cannot say your points. You're always being rubbished. You're always being used. I use that extreme word by someone else. So just like any other trait, the extremes are not ideal. So you don't want to just be agreeable. You rather be agreeable, but at the same time have some level of disagreeableness, that you are willing to stand for yourself. You don't just give out to everyone. You do not have trust on anyone you meet. So yes, I would say, do not assume any trait is better than the others.
Okay.
Yes.
So none of this trait is greater than the other.
True.
And therefore, the extremes are also not, they are negatives.
Yes.
So the other, of course, the last trait in the big 5 personality trait is neuroticism.
And just know that's the cast one.
Issues about the emotions, and it is stability or it is instability.
Very true. It's the one which is sort of is the dark trait or the dark sheep in the family. Yes.
Okay, and of course, yeah, it is the dark trait. It involves sub traits like anxiety.
Yes. So people who are highly in neurotics or neuroticism are the ones who are often worried about things which are going to go wrong, or you know, which you may say is what makes them also a bit perfectionist, that they're always trying to avoid mistakes.
Okay.
So yes, they have that fear of things going wrong. Yes.
Okay, but then there is also this other sub trait under neuroticism, which is anger.
Yes, I think you can look at anger in a sense that they get angry on themselves, in an aspect of maybe they feel guilty, they are always on a rush, they feel like if things go wrong, it's my fault. So yes, it comes with an element of anger.
Okay, there is an element of anger in there.
Yes.
What about the element of depression?
Yeah, it's also another subset. However, you might even look at depression as its good side. So it's not doesn't mean that
definitely.
Yes, doesn't mean that these things are bad. So you say depression, that means that person is self-aware. They are, in a sense, to be depressed also means you are always thinking about others. So I think depression as a concept, yes, not the disease of being depressed, have like what's called major depressive disorder, but to be depressed is also a subset of neuroticism.
Neuroticism also has the other substrate, and that is consciousness.
Yes, so as I was mentioning with depression, yes, that person is more self-aware than others. So in a sense, they're always thinking, they are always questioning their activities or their actions and their thoughts. So yes, they are highly self-conscious.
And then in this case, should we assume that being highly reactive, being highly impulsive is more of emotional instability?
I would say so, considering that it comes from a place of either anxiety or a place of emotional reactivity. So yes, such a person is likely to carry out actions which might not be the best logical action, just out of that emotional instability. Yeah.
Then the other last subtrait is fear, because we cannot talk about emotions and we leave out the subtrait fear.
Yes, and I may even say that's why they're impulsive in a sense, because of everything, or let me say the behaviors they portray out there. A lot of it is based in fear. The fear of maybe missing out, the fear of something going wrong, the fear of being maybe abused, the fear of being used. So yes, fear in a sense is the word which defines neuroticism more than any other word. Yes.
So dear listener, we have just gone through. Yes, so where do these traits come from?
Yes, that's an interesting question. I would say there are multiple factors. You may say it's the old age question of nature versus nurture.
Okay.
Yeah, so is it exactly from, you say it can be from both. I mean, yeah, it's a deep question. So, and the argument can always sway one way. It can be just because someone will say it's because of its genetics. Some might say it's because of the environment you grew up. But as I defined initially, I would say personality, in a sense, is something which is inherent. So you might say it's genetical. You might say it's not just because genetics, but there's an element of the subconscious. Now we are going to some sort of a psychology of the unconscious, which says we all have a shared consciousness, which we call the collective unconsciousness. Just like we inherit DNA, we also inherit aspect of the conscious from our ancestors. At the same time, the society we live in.
So at the same time, society, the environment can help shape the trait.
Yes, the society, but not in the way of when, let me say, you grew up in this society, which is what we were describing as the character, but in a different way. And let me give you actually a good example of why personality is something which we purely grew up with. It's not something which we acquired. Yes.
Okay.
So these researchers, psychologists, they did a research on twins. So imagine there were families where these twins who, as you know, they almost share 100%. They were identical twins of the DNA. So in a sense, they are same. So they were taken to two different families. So they both grew up in different households. So with different parents, probably different environment. The funny thing is, when they tested them, when they were 15, they came to realize they shared the same personality, which tells you personality is inherent.
It's inherent.
Yeah, it's not acquired.
Not acquired.
Yes.
So why are we not the same?
Okay, that's an interesting
For example,
question.
like those twins.
Yes, that's an interesting question. Yes, those twins, yeah. Why are we not all the same? Why don't we have one personality?
Why don't we have one personality?
So my answer to that will be using the theory of let me say evolution, is that the natural selection happens in a way of keeping us all to be alive. You know, imagine, let me say 300 years ago or even 1,000 years ago, living in a society where you are all extroverts. Let's say you're all outgoing. It means there'll be no one listening to anyone else. Or growing up in a society where it's highly open, so there'll be no order. That's why, in a way, there's a way environment or nature, or you say God has balanced us to always have variety of these personalities within each of us, so that one is better at maybe leading, the other is better at being maybe a teacher, one is better at being creativity, being a mother. So that's why I would say God has created us in a way, or you may even say nature in that matter, to be compensating for each other.
Oh, so basically it is to compensate for the other,
Yes.
which this person is lacking, the other one compensates. So what does the science of the brain tell us about this personality?
Yes, considering now that we have this technology to assess the brain, currently the science will say have identified 4 out of 5 of the traits. The one which is still a mystery is the one of openness. However, let me start with the extroversion. So in the brain we have a part which is called the reward system.
Yes.
Which is where this hormone or neurotransmitter called dopamine is released. So people who are highly extroverted have been found to have that area which is highly sensitive. So it means they are always seeking a reward. That's why they're always risk taking. That's why they're always going to meet a new person. That's why they are seeking a new experience, because they get a high dopamine release from trying out. So that part of the reward system. So that is extroversion. In a one way, extroversion is opposite of neuroticism, because you say people who are highly neuroticism are not that excitable, and the part of the brain which is governs the element of fear, which you have been mentioning, is called the amygdala and hippocampus. But the amygdala is responsible for reacting to fear. So that part of the amygdala is sort of a bigger in those people, and then the hippocampus is where we have the memory part. So whenever such a person interacts with, or they think about something which has happened to them initially, they react extremely. So the amygdala is bigger than the other people. Let's come to, I would say, aspect of consciousness, which has been associated with the part of the brain which is executive, this part of the frontal lobe, which is responsible for making us an orderly, or making us an adult, in a sense, a responsible person. The fourth one, which is agreeableness, has been associated with what you might call the theory of the mind, which is how do we come to have empathy for a fellow person. If you have seen a baby or a child who is maybe, let us say, they are 1 year old, they have not really understood what it means to have empathy for another person. That's why they will not have an issue with maybe, what can we say, even biting you, and they will laugh, because they have not yet understood what it means for you to be in pain. So the theory of mind is how we came to understand, or how we come to develop a theory about the mind of the other person. So if you are in pain, for me, I can have a theory in my mind that you are in pain. So kids who are let us say below the age of 4, which you may say is 4, is when they start understanding how the other person is feeling. Yes, so they're putting themselves in the shoes of the other person. So you may say they have developed a theory of mind. There will be a variations which you say we'll talk about it further, the differences, but the last one, which is the openness, is the one which I said currently there isn't really any distinct part of the brain which has been located to be highly involved with it. So it's a bit of a complex trait. You may say it's the complex trait within the 5 traits.
So let's look at personality in the lens of gender. We have seen the way a man reacts or behaves is always not similar like the way a woman behaves.
Yes, Peter, it's a bit of a controversial topic. Yes, to say that men and women are different currently. So, however, you see now the reason why these differences exist, because the theory that men and women are the same is based on saying that it's because of the culture that they grew up. That's what makes them different. Perhaps the culture has some aspect to it. Maybe you can't deny it. Considering that we talked about the concept of character, the character, which is how we grew up, the environment and the traditions, the cultures, our parents, what they instilled in us, even the values. However, you see now in countries which are highly egalitarian, means they're highly equal, like in Sweden, they have discovered actually the character traits vary so much that, so the assumption was, if you let me say motivate girls to study math, they will really become engineers like men.
Okay.
However, the irony is in those countries, actually the divide is so wide that girls are going more extreme to more feminine roles. You may say nursing, you may say being a teacher, while men are going to more masculine roles, which you can say engineering or IT or fields which does not involve dealing with fellow humans, but more like machines. So I think also that has proven that there are distinct differences between the genders, specifically when it comes to agreeableness, which you say it's more common in women. Maybe the aspect of conscientiousness, the element of being orderly, though not maybe the aspect of competence, or to some extent maybe. However, so the some of these sub-traits, there are differences within the sub-traits. Extroversion, assertiveness, which is more of manly. That's why you see a lot of conflicts between relationships. So
So then, how would we discuss culture and personality? Do we have some cultural differences? Do we see such happening, and why? Perhaps, if
to some extent, yes, because you can truly appreciate there are some societies which are more, you may say, extroverted.
Yes, extroverted.
Yes, like let me give you an example. If you compare USA to Japan, the American people or majority of Western people are highly extroverted, which you can say is because it's a society which is individualistic. So every individual has to stand out, and the more you're extroverted, the more likely you are to succeed, compared to society like Japan or a lot of African countries where they are conservative. So for you to stand out, you need to be highly in conscientiousness, means you must be have a sense of duty to the society or the company you're working for. You need to be organized, you need to be cautious. So in a sense, you might say it has to do with the natural selection, because you might say a person who is highly extroverted in the West is highly likely to succeed, highly likely to get married and have more kids than other persons. So they inherit that genes from such a, let me say, a parent, compared to in Japan, where to succeed you are likely to be quiet, and you're better, you are ideally to be someone who follows the order. So you're likely to succeed, you're likely to propagate your genes, you're likely to have kids who will carry out the same genes. So in a sense, society rewards some traits compared to others.
And we have also seen some societies which are more democratic, and other societies which are perhaps more of authoritative
Yes, interesting, and we might say that's why you can have, especially within the COVID times, that's why some societies really do not have issues with lockdown, because that's how they look at let me say the world view is highly authoritarian. That yes, they like order, while other societies were highly rebellious because they prefer more of, coming back to openness to challenge authority. Yes.
So of course, yeah, we are talking about personality, and we cannot really discuss personality and we leave out age, because age is it must be a contributing factor in one way or the other.
That's true. It's you might say it's a constant factor. But you see, now we have defined a trait as something which is stable through life. So ideally, age should not lead to change of the trait.
Yes.
However, it has been proven that the older you get as a man, so okay, let me start from when you are in your 20s, that's when a man is ideally lively, which means they are highly extroverted, they are outgoing, risk-taking, and possibly creativity, and some element neuroticism, so they're highly anxious. The older you get, the more it has been proven that as a man becomes more agreeable, they become more conscientiousness, so they prefer order more than chaos. So in a sense, I would say a theory which might possibly be the right answer is because of testosterone, which goes down in men the older you get. So testosterone comes with being, sort of a domineering, being outgoing, being risk-taking, being assertive. So another sense is that's why majority of successful people in history, whether they are businessmen, whether they are artists, whether they are politicians, most of their success happens before the age of, you may say, 40, or actually 35. So the age from 25 to 35, that decade, is when a man is likely to do their best work, unfortunately. So if you have missed that age, you're likely to lose that element of creativity, that element of hard working. Yes.
So let's look at the relationship between personality and learning.
Yeah, I think I've already hinted on some of these points when I mentioned when we were talking about the trait of conscientiousness. People who are highly in conscientiousness are good at school because they are hardworking. They're good at submitting, let me say, their assignments in time. They are likely not to have conflicts with their classmates and their teachers. And at the same time, they have that sense of duty and responsibility to their, let me say, society and their family and their parents in that sense. So conscientiousness is positively correlated with being a good student. At the same time, you might say agreeableness because of the element of being, good to your classmates, not being a troublemaker, makes you a better student. Unlike neuroticism, which is negatively correlated in a sense that students who are high in neuroticism, emotional instability,
reactive.
Yes, they are the element of reactivity, but there's even the element of, let me say, self-consciousness. So they are not good, in this, when it comes to interacting with their classmates, they may be isolated. So that has a poor correlation with their learning ability.
How does this now interact with an academic achievement or success?
Interesting. Yes, interestingly, let me bring this concept of IQ. IQ has been, though people might think IQ is not actually accurate or the accuracy rate, however, IQ is the most accurate test in psychology. So it has actually been proven IQ is so precise and so accurate, a proper IQ test. And in a sense, IQ has been positively related to openness to experience. So someone who is open to experience is likely to have what's called parallel thinking, or thinking outside the box. They're likely to have an element of what you might also call, because intelligence itself has been classified to two. There's crystal intelligence, which is maybe what you might call, it's a smart student, because that means they do their coursework well, they go and read the assignments, they go and answer the questions the right way, compared to, let me say, someone who's a genius, that they are more thinking outside the box, which you will call fluid intelligence. So there's crystal intelligence or crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence. So openness has been associated highly with fluid intelligence, which is also IQ in a sense. Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about personality in line with career of profession.
Yes, and I think I've also mentioned when I was talking about conscientiousness. You see how that trait is quite valuable when it comes to even career. Because it's almost the same thing as being a good student. It means you are punctual at time, you listen to your boss or your manager, you do your task, you know, the way you're supposed to do it, you put your head down, you can work for 20, 30 years, compared to someone who is high in openness, who is always looking maybe for a new experience. So yes, conscientiousness again is highly related with a career, a good career outcome in a sense. Yes, unlike neuroticism, which is also negatively related, because neuroticism also with this element of maybe, let me say, depression, element of anxiety. Yes, because that means such a person will not stand out. Yes, such a person will not stand out clearly, will not claim credit for their work, so they will likely not get promotion. They might not have assertiveness, which is kind of more in extroversion. However, let me come to agreeableness. You might think, okay, agreeableness has this good side when it comes to career, because people who are highly and agreeable, they're good teamwork. You know, they're good at being cooperative within the team, which is a good side. The bad side is that they are not likely to ask for a raise in their salary. They're not likely to ask for promotion. So yes, in a sense, it is both good and bad. Yes, when it comes to agreeableness. Unlike disagreeableness, which is why if you realize majority of leaders, majority of CEOs, you might say they're a bit psychopathic in a sense. They are more selfish, so they are more disagreeableness. That's why, coming back to the element of gender, men likely to succeed in their careers, likely to be leaders or the top executives in an organization, because of they are naturally more disagreeable compared to women. Yes, unfortunately. That's why.
So let's talk about the relationship between personality and success at work or even.
Yes. Now, this is when it comes to success. That's why you say a character like openness might stand out, because people who are high in openness to experience, they're likely creative, which makes them more innovative, which makes them entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, meaning that they are innovative within the institutions, or they can start their own companies, which is why you might say there are people who are likely to be successful in a what financial sense. Maybe in a sense we talked about conscientiousness, because you can, if that such a person can work for, let us say, 30 years, they would have climbed the hierarchy, and by the time, let me say, they're retiring, they could have really been in a top level or top pay. However, openness is the one which stands out when it comes to success.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are talking about personality and how it relates with life, and let's talk about personality and relationships.
Interesting topic. Yes.
Relating with one another, or even intimate
relationships. So, funny enough, now here is where the character which stands out, you might say, specifically for women, is agreeableness. Yes.
Trust, honesty.
For that matter, also for men, agreeableness is not is ideal, though they could be complementing each other. That's when it comes to agreeableness. The character which is negative when it comes to relationship is extroversion. You know why? An extrovert is likely to cheat, because an extrovert, in a sense, is looking for new.
Is looking for new. He's more social. It's more
outgoing.
It's more happy.
Exactly.
Okay.
New experiences. So because of that, an extrovert
is excitement seeking.
Excitement seeking, yes. So a marriage can be a bit tricky for an extrovert, for that matter. Maybe another one which could be detrimental to a relationship, which is actually proven, in fact, is the number one killer of relationships is neuroticism.
Neuroticism.
Specifically, because it's highly found within women, neuroticism. A woman who is more neurotic in a sense, having these mental disorders of whether anxiety or depression or fear can really derail a relationship. So neuroticism has a negative impact on relationship. When it comes to openness may have a good side when it comes to maybe creativity. I think I mentioned humor, especially for men. A man needs to be, have sense of humor. Maybe the aspect of success in life. Though on the other end, on the other side, it can also be negative when it comes to, a man wants to leave his job to start something project. Stability is lost. Which is now why conscientiousness might actually be good in a sense of having stability within the relationship, having that order, having that understanding. So when it comes to now the two people, what makes them a likely success in a relationship or marriage for that matter? You might say it's ideal to be closer to each other when it comes to these 5 traits. You can imagine being an extrovert and maybe your wife or your girlfriend is introverted. Yeah, you can see how much potential conflicts. This person wants to go out. This person doesn't like going out. So those are daily conflicts. And when this person doesn't want to go out, other person who's an extrovert interprets that as the other person saying, in a negative manner, because they are not in the shoes of the other person, and vice versa. So that's why it's ideal for the two partners to be at least closer to each other in these dimensions. There could be some extremes here and there, but the closeness, especially when it comes to agreeableness and the element of conscientiousness, at the same time avoiding the aspect of neuroticism, maybe extroversion, tricky one, likely to lead to a longing, a lasting relationship or marriage.
Okay, so what does this mean to a married person or to one who is intending to get married? When you look at all these personality traits, do you really need to go for, if perhaps I'm more of agreeable, do I really need to go for my fellow agreeable?
Okay, that's an interesting point. However, I would say that the interesting thing about these traits, because they're a spectrum, you see, you could be agreeable in, let me say, 95%.
Yes.
And the other person can just be agreeable maybe 93%. So there's a difference of 2%. But when you're having that conversation, you feel like you're opposite ends. So it's because of it's a spectrum. There's always one who's going to be more
than the other
on this. But ideally, yes, that's why it's ideal to be at least closer to each other. So you can have a conflict when it comes to agreeableness, but the conflict should not be a lasting conflict. If a person is disagreeable, it means yes, they like conflicts. If you are agreeable, it means if she's agreeable, she will likely avoid conflicts. And a conflict avoid is a conflict waiting in the long run.
Definitely.
So it's that. So you might as well do a test for each other just to understand where you are coming from. It's not even about should you end the relationship. It's just, can you understand where this person is coming from? Yes.
So let's talk about this interesting one, Yako. It's how does politics impact personality? How does personality impact the political journey?
A very, very hot topic. We already mentioned how openness, one of these sub traits, is challenging authority. Yes, okay. A person who high in openness wouldn't really sit down and just ignore what's happening politically. It's not that, you might say, even if things are going right, for them they're always trying to challenge that system. Yes, that's why they're innovators, that's why they're also entrepreneurs, that's why they're likely to start companies or organizations, that's why they're likely to be activists, some sort of one way or another. Unlike a person who's conscientiousness, who likes that order, who will probably hate this disruptor. This one likes this order, likes the way things are. This other one is a rebel. He wants to destroy the system. So you might say people who are high in openness to experience are more likely liberal, in the sense of, let me say, US. You have liberals, means they're always trying to change the system. They're trying to innovate. They're trying to renovate. They're trying to get outsiders, you may say immigrants. They're trying to open borders. They were not happy with COVID, because they were like, I want to go out. Who are you to tell me? So they like to fight the authority. Countries like France, who every week there's some sort of demonstration. Even something as simple as, you might even say, this last demonstration, I know how much you are aware of it, of France, was because of the president increased his retirement age to 2 years. That led to a demonstration for like a year now. So yes, such a small thing can likely incite, unlike countries like we mentioned, Japan, which
is orderly.
Yes, there's a saying in Japan which says, the nail which stands out is likely to be hammered. Yes. So that you should not stand out. Follow the society, follow the order. Don't stand out.
That's a good one.
Yes. If you know what's good for you, follow
set
order.
up for that.
And that's why, in a sense, you realize there's even what's called death by overworking in Japan. Someone can be working till, what they say. So even the government implemented a system where it said the work ends at, let's say, 8. But no one will leave office at 8 because everyone is looking at each other, and you don't want to be the one who left first. So everyone will wait till it's 10 and they will go.
You don't need to be the standings.
Yes, you don't want to stand out. That standing nail is dangerous in such societies.
So let's talk about religion in line with personality.
Yes, very interesting one also. Also a bit controversial in a sense. People who are in openness, they have that feeling element. That element which looks for, you might even call it mystical, spiritual experience. So they are always looking for spiritual experience. Something which is awe-inspiring, something which is transcending, something which is outside this world. In a sense, something which is artistic. So people who are in openness, they're always the ones who are leading to, the spiritual element of religion. Let's come to the people who are high in consciousness. They are the ones who like the order. So they are the ones who prefer the dogma, the indoctrination, the part of religion which is, we do not question. Yes, we do not question the faith.
Yes, we don't question.
Unlike this one who is always questioning the faith, this one doesn't want you to question the faith. So also, our traits can put us in one end or another.
So does that mean? Let's now talk about the cult aspect of it. There are a number of cults, perhaps. So should we say that these are more of the openness?
Yes, you might say a person who is open will be the one to start a cult. When he starts a cult or she starts a cult, she is likely to attract fellow people who are open, who are sort of outcasts from, let me say, the current religious system. They feel they have not been, accommodated currently. So someone now, you'll see this, what you will call them, prosperity pastors who will come and promise them, I can save you as long as you can pay me money, or there's a heaven somewhere, let's travel there. So yes, the element of cult is likely to attract people who are high in openness. Yes.
So let's now come down to the shadow aspect of the personality. We have really talked about the good, very good part of personality, but there must be the shadow aspect of this very personality, whether it is agreeableness, whether it is extroversion, whether it is consciousness. There must be some dark aspect of it.
The dark aspect, the bad element of the, you may say, it's the other side of the coin.
Yes, the other side of the coin.
Yeah. I remember you showed me a case of a South African man who escaped from prison. I think his name was Thabo.
Yes.
Thabo Bester.
Yeah, Thabo Bester.
It's a good case study for the dark personality, what you might describe as the dark triad or the dark tree of the personality. What are they? The first one is narcissism.
Narcissism.
It's a word which has been also overused currently. Everyone is described as a narcissist, especially in the social media platforms. You say something, you must be a narcissist. Or my boyfriend is a narcissist, my girlfriend is a narcissist. So the word has been overused. However, I did a narcissist, as the word comes from Narcissus, who was a Greek story of the man who fall in love with his image in the water. So,
okay.
Yes, a narcissistic person is a person who has a big image of themselves. Just like that meme of a cat looking at a mirror and seeing a lion. Yes. So now you can say, how does a narcissist come about? I think you say currently it's because of, you might say it's the trauma. They have an element of post-traumatic response. So a child who has been abused by, you might say actually a narcissist, especially for a man or a son, a boy, a narcissistic mother, can easily develop narcissism because of they have been told to present themselves in a fake way. They have been told to be, not in touch with their true self, and they become highly defensive, highly emotional when they feel a threat. Now, there are actually two types of narcissism.
Okay.
The first one, which is the common one, the grandiose, the former president of US, Mr. Trump, someone who's always bragging, someone who's always, posting how they are great, how they're doing good, which you may say it means they are low in agreeableness, they're highly disagreeable. They possibly have no neuroticism, so they don't feel any guilt. They can say whatever which comes to their mind. That's the common one, which is the grandiose narcissism. Now there's a hidden one, which is more of vulnerable. They're called vulnerable narcissists. Those are all. They also have big ideas about themselves in their mind. However, they're high in neuroticism, so they don't express it out clearly. They maybe bring it out indirectly. They can bring it out passive aggressively. They can bring it out in a way of being, a vulnerable. Like, they can ask you for, please, can you send me, some good money, some money right now. I'm here having issues, so they can manipulate you. But tomorrow you'll see that person also bragging. So they are more vulnerable. That is the first triad.
Yes, the other triad is psychopathy.
Psychopathy, yes. What does it mean to be a psychopath?
Psychopath.
Yes, you might say serial killers, people who kill people in a cold blood. Psychopathy, in a sense, you can say it's the combination of these three traits. A person who, number one, they are low in neuroticism, so they don't feel guilt, they don't feel bad, they're not self-conscious. Number two, they are low in agreeableness, so they don't have sort of a self-care, they don't have altruism for other people, they don't have modesty in the sense.
They don't cooperate.
Yes, they don't cooperate. That's a good one of putting it out there. So they are disagreeable to the extreme end. Lastly, they are low in conscientiousness, meaning they don't respect social order. They don't have sense of duty.
They don't care about what they are doing.
They don't care what they are doing. In fact, what other people think about what they are doing.
Definitely.
So they can carry out extreme criminal acts, even sometimes to get attention. Yes, because they don't really respect the social order. So the combination of those three doesn't mean a person who has those three will become a serial killer. That's why I mentioned psychopath when I was talking about agreeableness. You can even be a good CEO. Yes, so those characters can help you to succeed in your career, because by the time you are a CEO, it means you should have a good image of yourself. Hence, you cannot be neuroticism. First, let me talk about the third of the triad, which is Machiavellianism. To be a Machiavellian, if you know, Machiavellian was an Italian writer, in a sense he was a politician who wrote a book called The Prince, about how should a leader rule a society. So in the way he described what you currently describe as a politician, that came from that book of his. What does it mean to rule people? What does it mean to have spies? What does it mean to manipulate people? What does it mean to be always scheming, to always have plots to destroy your enemy? That, in a sense, is what is referred to as Machiavellianism. Yeah, Machiavellianism. So let me come to this one I was talking about, the CEO. To be a leader, you need to have a combination of those three, not to the extreme end. Number one, you need to be a narcissistic, that you need to believe in your ideas, because no one is going to believe in your ideas.
Okay.
So you need to fight even society or your friends or your family, so to some extent. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have to become a delusional about your ideas. Number two, when it comes to psychopathy, I would say you have to be a bit apathetic. What do I mean by that? You cannot be neurotic in a sense that you are scared. Someone, let me say, you go to a customer, they reject you, doesn't mean that you have to feel emotional. You have to come to learn and ignore the emotions. So you have no feelings. In a sense, you become apathetic. The third one, which is Machiavellian, in a sense, yes, you have to be able to set up a strategy, a plan for your life. Otherwise, you cannot have a proper system in place. So those triad, on the extreme end, they are not pathological. They are dark. And I would like you to check out that story of South Africa.
The South African
Yes.
guy.
Because that guy's story, you realize he really had the three. The fact that he believed in himself so much that he started a company in jail, so much that he believed he was a big person. He there's something you have to say. He was psychopathic. That even before he committed crimes, he was
Many
a
of them.
Yes, when he killed someone in jail.
impregnated.
Yes. The third one, which is Machiavellian, is that he was a strategic man. How the fact that he could run away from prison
From prison.
shows you how much of he was a creative man. He was strategic. How much he could seduce women, like that famous this doctor, celebrity doctor. Maybe we can talk about why is it that, let me say, women are attracted to men who
Who are more of curious.
yes,
who are more of
more of this. You might call them the bad boys.
okay.
Yes, it's an interesting topic. I think you might say it's evolutionary in the sense that a young girl, let me say the age of maybe from the age of 15 to 25, cannot separate competence from confidence.
From confidence.
So a man who is a dark triad in a sense, who is psychopathic, can appear confident,
Yes,
but
but
they are
not
they are not competent. Yes, and so they can easily attract, they can easily seduce a woman in a sense.
So, so a young girl who is there should be able to differentiate the two, the confidence and the competence.
Yes, should be careful on how they handle.
But we have not talked about the other dark side, which is sadist.
Yes, in a sense, sadism, you might say now you can add it to the other three, but it's it's
A little more separate.
to some extent, but currently it has been combined with the other three. Not doesn't mean someone who is let us say a criminal will be a sadistic. It's more of like it's like an icing on the cake. You know, you can be a killer, but if you enjoy the killing or the act of torturing, that makes you sadistic. Meaning you are likely disagreeable totally. You have, that means you don't care. You have no empathy for your fellow human, so you can easily inflict damage and actually take pleasure from inflicting the damage. So yes, sadism, which is also some sort of a pathology within this, they're called, let me say, sexual disorders, or what you call paraphilias, where what is called sadistic and masochism. Yes, sadism and masochism, BDSM. Those are the elements of abominations within sexual disorders. Yeah.
So let's talk about the extremes of personality, because the extremes of personality more likely come in with some disorders.
Very true. Yes, the personality disorders. There are commonly three clusters or three groups of those disorders. The first one, which is the odd disorders, or an eccentric, a person who's eccentric. In there you have paranoid personality disorder, people who are paranoid. You have schizoid personality disorder. Those are people who have more of a, may call, mystical experience. And then schizotypal, the ones who are more aggressive personality disorder. The second cluster is what you call emotional or erratic. You have people who are antisocial. Now antisocial, you might even call it sociopathy. You might say it's people who, before they become psychopaths, some people are initially antisocial. They carry out crimes, petty crimes like theft and stuff. The second one is borderline personality disorder, which is a person who is hot and cold. You might have met someone who initially they're happy with you, then they're angry at you, then after 1 minute they're happy at you, so they're hot and cold. The third one, which is histrionic or hysteria, which is the word which is associated with negatively with women, to be hysterical, to always be over the top, to be dramatic in a sense. The fourth one, which is narcissistic personality disorder, and I think we've touched upon narcissism, which is different from So there are people who are naturally already narcissistic in a sense because of how they grew up. So those disorders come about as a consequence of the growing up,
the environment, the culture,
yes, the parenting.
the parenting.
The third group is
the anxious
group, where you have number one is the one which you can call avoidant personality disorder. People who are just avoidant, who avoid other people to the extreme that they don't even want to leave their house. Number two, you have what you can call dependent personality disorder. People who are so dependent, you realize a girl who is with a boyfriend who is abusive, but she's dependent in him, she doesn't want to leave him. The last one, which is obsessional compulsive personality disorder, which is different from OCD. So these are people who are also, they are more like, compulsed with their obsessions, in a sense that they will want to close this door even though the door is closed, or they want to wash their hands a couple of times
even when they are clean.
Yes. So they have an element of extreme anxiety, which leads to some sort of obsessive compulsiveness. Yeah.
Now these extreme cases bring in these disorders, and now let's discuss personality in relation with the physical health or the health of a person.
Yes, so you can see how some of these personality traits and the disorders, or even the dark ones, contribute to a medical illnesses or physical illnesses. So someone can be hypertensive just because they are highly in neuroticism,
highly anxious.
They are highly anxious. They're always aware. So that can easily trickle down to become hypertensive, or it can even lead to heart conditions. There is element of addiction as a consequence also of neuroticism. So you realize neuroticism plays a big role when it comes to mental disorders and some physical disorders as a consequence of. Yes. So we've already talked about depression, it's part of it, anxiety. However, when we talk about, let me say, schizophrenia or psychosis, someone who is hallucinating, the typical crazy person, when someone is crazy, can be a consequence of openness to creativity, because you realize, in a one way, creativity can be extremely craziness. Person who is always creative, person who is thinking, can easily switch, or so that's why creativity is normally bounded with neuroticism. So they are afraid. At the same time, they have some level of orderliness that they keep themselves in check. They don't just go out and set a fire. So psychosis, and then even addiction for that matter, which could be associated with neuroticism. At the same time, extroversion, who are always trying out new things, who can also die from accidents. Yes, the extroverts. That's why you should be careful if you're married an extrovert. You can die. Yeah.
So okay, yes. Let's now maybe in conclusion, can you change a certain personality trait?
Okay, that's a big word, considering that we said personality is something which is inherent in us, something which is permanent. However, you might not be able to change your trait, but you can learn about it. You can change your environment, so it means you can change your character. At the same time, you can become more conscious about it. So I will give you a quote by the psychologist Carl Jung, where he said, "Unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you'll call it fate." Meaning, if you don't know about your traits, if you have not meditated, you will be doing things like extreme things, like we talked about extroverts. You'll be cheating, but you don't even know why you are cheating. You'll just say it's my fate.
It's your fate.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Yako, and dear listener, we invite you to take a personality test. We have talked about the big 5 personality traits. Take one. Book a 30-minute session on our website. That's vigilantliving.org. Subscribe and share.
Thank you, and have a good day.